Okay, so today I want to talk about albinos in comic books. And I'm telling you right now, we got to do better. We have got to do a much better job. Like, I'm sitting there and I've been watching the old Black Lightning series that he had done on CW, you know. And of course, the villain, of course, is Tobias Whale. So I started thinking about it. I'm like, oh yeah, Tobias Whale. Just thinking about his character, how he moved, and all that, and you know. And then he was in another Suicide Squad, you know, a mission, whatever. And I'm like, oh, Tobias Whale. So he was just top of mind, and that made me think about him as a character. Then I thought about Nekra, who was another, you know, albino character featured in this one in Marvel Comics. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, wow, there's not really a lot of albino characters throughout the comic book world. And it's not. Like, it's very, very few. I think I came up with like 6 total. Some of them, I couldn't even find images of them. That's how obscure they were. Older characters that may have been introduced maybe once and whatever with their reviews on. But the thing about every single one of these albino characters, of which there are scant few, like every single one of them is a villain. And I'm not joking. Like, across the board, they are all villains. Like, basically 100%. Like, there's a couple that are kind of ambiguous on their villainy, but they're still kind of villainous at the same time. Like, they're clearly not just good and cool, okay? So let's go over these you know, portrayals and kind of what it means overall. Like, the psychology behind this, right? So we see Tobias Whale, and of course, he's a crime boss. He's like the reoccurring enemy of Black Lightning, who of course is this very righteous guy. Like, Black Lightning is all, I'm saving the hood, I'm a principal, I'm a teacher, like my wife, you know, like I'm a father, I'm absolutely righteous. So he represents the complete opposite of him in every way. Then we have, of course, Nekra, and Nekra is a little different than every other albino because she's, you know, well, I guess maybe she isn't different. I was gonna say, you know, she manifests a lot. There's a lot of extra stuff to the Nekra personality that's just beyond, you can see her image, hate. This is part of her charm. Nekra is a person who's fueled by rage. We'll get into all that and that kind of negative depiction there. There's Baron Macabre, who is a villain to Wakanda and the Black Panther, and he appears as this very pale skinned, probably albino, who, you know, he works all with the dead. So again, they're associating death, you know, with this, with albinism, right? And then, you know, there's a couple other characters in the Hellboy universe. There's another, like, in Dark Horse. There's a few scant characters around. And again, with these guys, I really couldn't even find much about them as I was starting to research. So you can see there's a handful of albino characters as I'm aware of them, and every single one of them is a villain. And this goes deeper because we talk about how much comic books borrow from mythology, and that it holds very true. If we look, you know, historically, you know, what was going on in East Africa, Central Africa, there have been issues with albinism in terms of people looking at them as if they were conduits to the spirit world. They're not seen as humans. They're seen as omens. They're different kind of things. They have magical body parts, which has been a very harmful thing to this group of albinos. And even in other indigenous in indigenous cultures, they were seen in different lights. Here in the Americas, and while they were not necessarily seen. They weren't seen as humans. Some of them were seen as deities, like they were supernatural, but they were not seen as humans, which is what I'm sure all of them would want, right? These were in Norse and European mythology. They were still associated with like fairies, ghosts, elves, all things that are, you know, it's more positive, but they're still not being just seen as a human. They're always seen in this like supernatural or death kind of realm. And during the spread of colonialism, you know, arguably it got even worse as a lot of these were abducted. These people were abducted. They were placed in like freak shows throughout Europe, throughout the America. They were, you know, eroticized. They were studied. They were feared on a global theme. And we see that reoccurring in comic books. In this case, you know, I always talk about the mythology creeping its way into comic books, and this is like shockingly on par. There are reoccurring stereotypes that's just, you know, absolutely villainous. In terms of like Tobias Whale, Baron Macabre, like absolutely to the core, villainous beings. They are supernatural, linked with mystical powers, as we see in the other representations, or the lone freak, right? So they are just absolutely in comic books, literally just used as a tool, as a representation that's always bad. They challenge that they are diverse or have dualities in any way. Because of their nature, they're going to be portrayed as villainous, and I think this is something that, as an industry, they should take a very strong look at. This has got to be a very small group of people who are enduring what their condition is, and on top of it, society and even modern storytelling is vilifying them in ways that just are. I couldn't find an albino character that was just a friend to somebody. Didn't have to have superpowers. Couldn't be. You were just a regular person. Can't find one representation. But give me your thoughts on this one. I just kind of want to look at albinism, and I want to talk about some of these characters in terms of what kind of abilities, because it says a little bit more about the psychology behind how we represent them.